So we're dealing with the 13th verse of 12th chapter. Sandushta satadam yogi yatatma didhanishchayeha mayyarpida manobuddhi yomad bhaktas samay priyaha. Now, if you read some of our mythological books or classical religious philosophical literature, you come across many characters, supposed to be mythical characters, who have embodied all these characteristics. And one of the most prominent character that you come across in ancient religious literature is Hanuman. Perhaps some of you have seen. Sometimes you will find Hanuman's picture in some old books, the Hanuman, the monkey god of the Hindus. Such titles you will find. But in reality, this great character Hanuman, portrayed in the Valmiki's Ramayana and also Adhyatma Ramayana of Vyasa, was not just a monkey that you see in a zoo or somewhere. He was the embodiment of all these characteristics. In fact, all the attributes and characteristics explained in the Gita, either in the second chapter, when Lord Krishna describes the attributes of a spiritual seeker who has reached the perfection, the highest perfection in steady wisdom, Sthita Prajna Lakshana, you find. Or the characteristics of an ideal devotee, explained in the 12th chapter, or the characteristics of a yogi, explained in so many chapters. All that you find in Hanuman's character. Just a few examples. See, all this. Santushta means always contented, with his mind and senses under perfect control, an embodiment of steady wisdom, iron will, determination, and complete surrender. Once Hanuman himself gave an analysis of his own character. He says, when I feel I am the body, I consider myself to be just a servant of the Lord. When I feel I am the individual soul, I feel I am a part of the universal soul. And when I feel that I am the ultimate reality, I feel I am Brahman itself. So he says, Deha buddhyatu dasoham. When I feel I am this body, when I have body consciousness at a lower level, then I consider myself to be the servant of the Lord. And when I feel that I am individual soul, then I feel and I am the absolute reality. Jiva buddhya tudamshekaha means when I feel I am this body through which an individual soul operates, I feel I am part and the Lord is the whole. When I feel I am myself Paramatman, the eternal soul, then I feel Aham Brahmasmi. Atma buddhyatu tumevaham means the experience explained in the Upanishad literature through the grand statements like Aham Brahmasmi, Tattwamasi, etc. This is Hanuman's analysis of his own personality. This can be considered 3 levels of a devotee's evolution. When a devotee feels that he is just a human being, then he has to establish a connection between himself and the Lord. And devotional literature gives a number of options. You can consider yourself to be God's servant, God's brother, God's child, and so on. So Hanuman says, when I am at a lower level of consciousness, when I feel I am this body, this psychophysical mechanism, then I am just a servant of the Lord. But when I feel I am this Jivatma, means the individual soul, then I am part and the Lord is the whole. And when at the highest level of spiritual consciousness, when I feel I am Atman, at the highest Advaitic experience, I feel I and you are the same. You can find this in Hanuman's character. To drive home the point that Hanuman was not just an ordinary character, I can give two examples. One from Adhyatma Ramayana, which is supposed to be an old textbook expounding the philosophy of Advaita, non-dualism. And also from Valmiki's Ramayana. Yesterday we were describing how an ordinary man who was not even spiritual aspirant, a robber, by the grace of sages and by constant practice of holy name, evolved into a great saint and the author of the first great classic of Sanskrit literature. In Adhyatma Ramayana, Sita is the wife of Rama. Well, you may consider this as mythological books like Homer's Iliad or Odyssey or Virgil's Aeneid and so on. It's true. But then these books have got one speciality. They teach you a great philosophy of life. Not only spiritual philosophy, but also the philosophy of secular life. In fact, that is the unique character of these classics. Now, Sita gives an analysis of Hanuman's character. Sita says Hanuman is Brahman itself. And when Hanuman feels that he is the Atman, he is Brahman itself. The reason is, in Adhyatma Ramayana, Rama himself is portrayed not as a human character, not the character of creative writing, but rather as the supreme consciousness, Brahman or Atman itself. So Sita says, Ramam vidhi param brahma satchidanandam advayam sarvopadhir vinirmuktam sattamatram agocharam. This is the definition, this is a description of Rama as given by Sita when she advises, when she gives spiritual instructions to Hanuman. You realize Rama as Supreme Brahman itself. It is the attributeless, the impersonal, the immanent, the transcendental principle, which is the indweller, the inner reality of every living being, which is omnipresent, omnipotent and transcendent. This is the description given by Sita in Adhyatma Ramayana. And in Valmiki Ramayana, there is a grand picture. Valmiki Ramayana depends on the ordinary literary analysis of human character. This Valmiki's Ramayana, it begins like this. Once Valmiki, this great sage, puts a question to Narada. Who is the greatest devotee and who is the embodiment of all conceivable sublime human characteristics? The noble man, the ideal man. So, Konosmin Sampradam Logi Gunavan Kashtaviryavan Dharmaknyascha Krudaknyascha Satyavakyo Dridhavrata. This is how Valmiki Ramayana begins. That Valmiki puts a question to Narada, asking the question, in this world, who is the perfect man? A man who has reached divinity by becoming better and better, a better and better human being, by manifesting more and more of his humanness, ultimately reaching the realm of divinity. Who is the perfect man? And in answer to this question, Narada says, Ikshvaku Vamsha Prabhu Ramo Nama Prakirtidaha. Who is that perfect character? That perfect character is the great man known as Rama, who was born in a great dynasty of solar line in ancient India. That's how Valmiki Ramayana depicts the life of Rama. Now, what does this Rama say about Hanuman as an ideal devotee? That is the point which I want to drive home. Well, in fact, in many of these classical works, you can find some unforgettable, sublime, graphic picturization of the best of human nobility and human divinity. See, it so happens that, Rama and Lakshmana, these two princes, were walking through the forest. That's how the story goes. And Hanuman and his friend Sugriva were living on the top of a hill. It's called Rishyamukachala. That's how the story goes. So when these two princes are walking in the forest, they were seen by these two, well, we don't consider them as monkeys, remember. They were all great, highly evolved human beings, Sugriva and Hanuman. So, I won't go into the details of the story. I want to drive home the central point related to the present context. So, Sugriva asked Hanuman to take the form of a brahmachari, means a novitiate who studies Vedas, who spends his days in an ashrama, in a monastery, learning the Vedas. So Hanuman disguised himself as a Vedic student and went to the place where Rama and Lakshmana were sitting and asked them, who are you, where are you from, what's the purpose of your coming into this thick, dense forests? And there is a dialogue, a conversation between Lakshmana, the younger brother of Rama, and Hanuman. And then Hanuman returns. And when Hanuman returns, Rama gives his estimate of this great devotee. Rama says that if you want to see a sublime example of knowledge and devotion, here is one. That's Rama's estimate of Hanuman. So Rama gives a number of characteristics that he found in Hanuman's personality. And all these you find, Adveshta Sarvabhudana, Maitra Karuna Evacha, Nirmamo Nirahankara, Samdukha Sukhakshami, Sandushta Satatam Yogi. All the characteristics that we are going to describe in the 12th chapter. All these are hinted. But then Rama also says, unless a person has studied all the 4 Vedas, and all the 9 schools, 9 branches of Sanskrit grammar, he won't be able to speak like this. So, na anurveda vidhinasya, na ajurveda dharinaha, na asama veda vidusho shakyamevam prabhashidam. Krishnam vyagaranam nunam anena bahudasudam, buhu vyaharada anena na kinchit apashaptidam. This is Rama's estimate of Hanuman. He says, unless one has mastered all the 4 Vedas, Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, Sama Veda, Atharva Veda, and all the branches of learning, and the different schools of Sanskrit grammar, and he has mastered and imbibed and practiced all the sublime attributes of an ideal devotee, he won't be able to interact with you the way this man did. That is the estimate which Rama gives of Hanuman. Now, so Hanuman is supposed to be one of the archetypal devotee of Vedantic tradition, of devotional tradition. So you find Santushta, always contented. Satatam Santushta, then Yogi, he was always contemplative, with his senses and mind under perfect control. We already explained this morning, Yatatma, Dridhanishayaka. I mean, a seeker, spiritual seeker of strong will, determination, and his mind and intellect completely devoted to the Lord. So all these you find. And then I already explained another characteristic of an ideal devotee is that he won't cause any anxiety, any fear, any commotion to anyone. He won't disturb anyone, but he can't be disturbed by anybody. Nobody can disturb him. So he is perfectly established in equipoise, in equanimity of mind. At the same time, he himself won't create any disturbance, would do anything which causes fear to others. I have already explained all this. In the 16th verse, anapeksha, absolutely free from desire. And shuchihi, mentally, physically, intellectually, perfectly pure. Dakshaha, only daksha means efficient. Daksha means resourceful, efficient, capable. These are the ideas implied by this word daksha. So, as I said this morning, a devotee won't be effeminate, inefficient, or irresponsible or unresponsive to situations and all that. All the great archetypal devotees of Vedantic tradition have been embodiments of all the sublime attributes which make a normal man succeed in material life. That is the test, in fact. All these great devotees, or all the great spiritual personalities the world has produced, were endowed with, equipped with all the attributes necessary to make a man, to enable a man to succeed in material life. But they gave up all that and turned and sublimated all those attributes to a higher plane. That's how a seeker becomes an ideal devotee. Now, according to the tradition, Vedantic tradition, devotional tradition, without devotion, without unwavering devotion, no one can reach the Supreme God. Bhaktya tud ananyaya shakya. That's what it means. Without this proper devotion, single-minded devotion, no one can reach the ultimate goal. And again, udasinaka. So, here the word udasina means, sometimes, the word udasina implies two characteristics in a human being. Udasina can be called a witness, unattached, non-attached, etc. You should be aware of what is going on. Still, you should be non-attached. These two aspects are required. Udasina or sakshi, it is called. Bodhrutvam and audasinatam. So, a devotee will be aware of everything. But being aware of it, he can remain unattached. See, if you are unattached, if you are detached because you are not aware of it, it is not a great quality. You should be aware of it, still remain unattached. That is the characteristic of an ideal devotee. So, Suchihi, Dakshaha, Udasinaha, Gatavyatha, and he is free from all worries. If you find a miserable looking individual and if he claims to be a devotee, you should not believe him, because or his idea of God, who himself should be just an embodiment of worry. Because if you think that God is omniscient, omnipresent, God is eternal consciousness, eternal bliss, and God is the one, God is all merciful, and then you claim to be, or you try to be a devotee of that God, and then you are always worried, a miserable look on your face, then it's a great contradiction. Because when you worship or meditate upon God, a little bit of those godly qualities should manifest in you. In fact, that is one sign of spirituality. Some of the aspects, some of the attributes of your object of worship will manifest in your own character. This you find normally even in ordinary life. You find small children who admire great athletes, great footballers, or great cricketers, themselves sometimes become very good in cricket, football, and respective fields. Those children who have great admiration for music, one way or other, they will try to imitate, but that attempt to imitate will naturally develop in them some of the attributes of great musicians. So, if you meditate on an ideal then the characteristics of that ideal should naturally manifest in you. So if you are devoted to a God who is all merciful, you can't be cruel and inhuman. In fact, that is a very interesting characteristic Vedantic tradition, Vedanta doesn't believe in an almighty, absolutely ruthless, uncompromising, tyrannical God who is determined to send half the humanity to hell because that section of humanity refuses to believe in him. In fact, Vedantic God opens his doors and windows even to those who don't believe in him, who don't care a damn for him, but who lead a good life. That is the greatness of Vedanta. Vedanta opens its doors and windows even to atheists and non-believers who are ready to lead a good life, who are ready to practice certain sublime spiritual ethical values. Vedantic God, Vedantic ideal of God opens his doors and his gates in front of him. Vedanta doesn't expect from you blind faith in anything, but it expects from you to lead a pure life, to be human. So the more spiritual you become, the more you become advanced, the more you advance in devotional practices, the better human being you become. So, in fact, that is the essence of a statement which Yudhishthira makes 3-4 times. He repeats several times in meditation and spiritual practice. First be a gentleman and then try to practice spirituality. That is the idea behind. So all these characteristics from a purely empirical angle are the characteristics of a perfect gentleman, a very humane being, human being, who is very, very humane. At the same time, as you advance further, more and more, you reach the divine dimension of devotional evolution. So, we already mentioned yasmano uddijate loko, lokano uddijate cha, etc. So, how a devotee develops and evolves subjectively and also objectively. We have already explained all this. And then sarva arambha parityagi yoman bhakta same priyaha. The idea is this. This devotee doesn't have a sense of self-centered agency of action. It should be explained, needs a little explanation. He is not a workaholic, but he doesn't avoid his duties and responsibilities. He does not consider himself to be the doer of an action, the agent of action, and also the enjoyer of the action. When he works, he considers God himself as the worker, God himself as the agent of action. And he is not attached to the action, because attachment to action and attachment to the result of action, both are the same. Normally, we are not attached to work, because if we can have the result of work without work, we will be perfectly happy. So what we normally consider to be our attachment to work is in fact our attachment to the result of work. Because this devotee has completely surrendered the results of all his activities, everything to God, so he doesn't consider himself to be an actor in this field. No, he is the real devotee. And then, yo na krishyadi na dveshti. He is free from elation. He doesn't show any jubilation or excited enjoyment when something pleasant happens to him. And na dveshti, and he is free from anger. Na shochati, he is free from sorrow. Na kamchadi, he is free from any kind of desire. All these are interrelated, all these portray the characteristics of an individual, of a person who has reached a sublime level of perfect equanimity or equilibrium of mind. The first important reason is na kamchadi. He has no desire. It is desire which actually brings problems. We have to remember, devotional philosophy doesn't tell you that you should not work in the world, you should not do anything which is necessary for making your life comfortable. Devotional philosophy insists that you can work for enjoyment of material prosperity, but at the same time you should not deviate from the path of dharma. And this ability to hold fast to the ideal of dharma is made easy by the devotee's deep dedication and devotion to God and his sense of surrender to God. Because if an individual tries to acquire artha and kama, what we call, the means for enjoyment of desires, if he tries to acquire prosperity and all other related prerequisites for making physical life comfortable, this is what everyone tries to do generally. But when you go out of your way to acquire these material comforts, even deviating from the path of certain virtues and ethical qualities, which collectively we call the word dharma. Means, in other words, dharma, artha, kama and moksha. These are the four values according to Vedantic heritage, which guide an individual's pursuit of life. Dharma is the foundation. Dharma, a set of values like truth, purity, charity, nobility. All these characteristics together can be called dharma, the supreme virtue. Artha and kama are related to material life. So, Vedantic tradition allows you to pursue the path of artha and kama, secular material comforts. But we should not deviate from the path of dharma, these collective virtues. We can, all truth, morality, all ethical values can be put under this heading, the category of dharma. When you follow the path of material needs without deviating from the path of dharma, you reach a point when you are convinced that material comforts are only means and they are not an end in itself, in themselves. But when you deviate from the path of dharma, these ethical values, and follow the path of artha and kama, you naturally come to a conclusion that artha and kama, material comforts, constitute an end in themselves. On the other hand, if you hold fast to these values, these virtues, you acquire material comfort, but you don't consider it as an end in itself, because you come to the conclusion that they are perishable. They cannot bring you eternal peace and happiness. There is a higher transcendental value which we call moksha, liberation, or it can be also called devotion, wisdom, knowledge, and so on. So, when you use the word, see, here it is stated, na kamkshadi, na shochadi, na dveshti, na hrishyadi, etc. Which means you should not have any craving, you should not have any sorrow, you should be free from craving, sorrow, anger, elation, and all these things. It doesn't mean that you should remain inactive. The idea is, when you reach or when you follow the path of material needs without deviating from the path of dharma, you can be free from all these vices like anger, desire, sorrow, too much of elation at gaining when you gain something purely material. You can avoid all these vices because you are convinced that there is something beyond, something transcendental. This is very clearly portrayed in the second chapter. In 2 verses, Lord Krishna gives a graphic picture of how a man slowly degenerates and falls down to lower and lower levels of spiritual life by attachment and desire. The 2 verses are this: Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsaha Sangasteshu Bajayade Sanga Samjayate Kamaha Kama Krodho Vijayade Krodha Bhavadi Sammoha Sammoha Smriti Vibhramaha Smriti Bhramshat Buddhinashu Buddhinasa Pranasyadi. These are the two verses. If I explain this, it becomes very obvious because it is a matter of day-to-day experience for any ordinary individual. See, when we go on thinking about material comforts, our mind naturally develops a culture, a set of tendencies, attitudes and behavior patterns which make our mind too much attached to objects of material desire. So, a strong bond of attachment is created when we go on contemplating on material comforts. People may put it other way. This is a logical and possibility. You may ask, see, is it because of our contemplation that we become attached to external objects? Or is it because of the existence of external objects that we become attached to them? But in reality, unless there is a strong desire and attachment within, we won't be trapped by any amount of external objects. See, a liberated soul can sit right in the middle of a marketplace and meditate. He won't be affected by what is going on. In fact, this morning we described, see, karmani akarmaya pasyat akarmani cha karmayaka. Sabuddhiman manusheshu sa yukta krishna karma krita. You can be hyperactive 24 hours of the day. Still you can mentally remain completely non-attached. That's possible for an advanced soul. On the other hand, if you go to a dense forest and choose a cave and sit there, you will be not different from sitting right in the middle of a marketplace. If your mind is restless, mind is not disciplined. So the ability to enjoy loneliness, the ability to enjoy being alone with ourselves is one sign of spiritual evolution. Because people are generally afraid of themselves. They want to run away from themselves. That's why there is a psychological syndrome you find. Most of the hobbies, not all, I'm not condemning any of these things, you should not misunderstand. But very often you find when we give temporary diversion, when diversion to our senses, we are actually giving freedom to the senses. In spiritual life, our aim is to attain freedom from senses and not to give freedom to senses. Because if we give freedom to senses, we will be a victim of the senses, we will be a slave of the senses. And senses will drag us down. Uddhareda atmana atmanam na atmanam avasadi. Yesterday we already in the 6th chapter you find. So the important principle is when our mind has already acquired certain characteristics and tendencies and certain behavior patterns, it naturally gets attracted towards external objects. And then when we are attracted towards them, we divert all our actions towards acquiring those objects of comforts. We don't always succeed. If we do not succeed, then we become kama krodho vijayate, means we become angry with ourselves, means kind of depression, disillusionment, etc. And when we become completely attached and when we become unhappy with ourselves because we are not able to acquire those things, we fall into the trap of delusion. And delusion takes us straight down to the lowest level. So the higher we fly, the lower we fall, as it is said. So what really happens if we do not try to, as I said yesterday, if we do not try to fill our mind with healthy spiritual food by diverting the 5 senses and also mind towards spiritually healthy, spiritually useful channels, mind will collect dirty food, filthy food, and that will make mind sick. And mind will be attracted towards external objects, and then spiritual degradation is inevitable. That is why It is said that an ideal devotee, without any effort, acquires all the attributes, all the aspects of internal and external discipline, which Patanjali explains in Raja Yoga, Yama, Niyama, etc. So Ahimsa, Satya, Asteya, Brahmacharya, Parigraha, these are yamas, which are internal. Shauja, Sandosha, Tapaswadhyaya, Iswaram, Pranidhana. This is the external. Some very important disciplines are very, very relevant. For example, Swadhyaya, reading. Instead of reading unnecessary or undesirable things, read good things. Instead of hearing undesirable things, hear good things. So, through the five senses, which act as doors through which ideas enter into our mind, we can keep our mind spiritually healthy. That is why Shankaracharya gives a very scientific explanation to the very concept of food. Food in Sanskrit, ahara means food. So he says food is not just what we eat or drink, food is what we imbibe through mind. So ideas that we accumulate in our mindset by coming in contact with the external objects are also food, and they are much more sensitive, in fact, much more powerful food. So if one gets fully established in this discipline, then he can be free from anger, he can be free from too much of elation, he can be free from sorrow, and he can be free from all desires. So Shubha, Ashubha Parityagi. Shubha means something which is pleasant, Ashubha means unpleasant. Technically it means you shuns, you gives up pleasant and unpleasant. Actually it means you go beyond the duality. Because we can never have an undisturbed flow of happy experiences in life. In fact, most of the problems which modern man is facing is that he considers that he should always have unbroken succession of pleasant experiences. This is absolutely, physically, psychologically, is an impossibility. So, if one wants to go beyond the unpleasant, if a spiritual aspirant wants to avoid the unpleasant, he has only one way to do that. He has to stop looking for or seeking the pleasant. If you stop seeking happiness, then you can avoid unhappiness. Because happy experience is preceded by unhappiness and succeeded by unhappiness. Suppose an event, an experience brings happiness. Well, we know very well that no happy experience can last forever. After some time, it will vanish. And then what is? It is unhappiness. And before the happy experience came, it was unhappiness. And after it has vanished, it is unhappiness. So happiness is only at the middle. And then also we are very fearful. One day this object of happiness may cease to exist. I may lose this object of happiness. So that also brings unhappiness. So unhappiness in the present, in the past, and also in the future. So devotional philosophers give a number of suggestions. One, to consider all your experiences as a gift of God. This is one. Second, to contemplate on the perishable nature of happy experiences. So these are the two ways to transcend, to go beyond the impact of happiness and unhappiness. It doesn't mean that you should not seek happiness. That it doesn't mean that. You rather, all spiritual philosophies are trying to help you to find a way to real happiness. In fact, that is the aim of all spiritual philosophies. To find a way to get real happiness, which is really beyond the empirical happiness and its antithesis, empirical unhappiness. Money, wealth, all these will certainly produce a feeling of happiness. But as everyone knows, it is only a fleeting experience. It will vanish one day. So certainly such experiences do not bring eternal peace and harmony. So in Gita, Lord Krishna himself says, Sukham atyandikam yattad buddhigrahyam atindriyam. Veti yatrana chaivayam sthidas saladi nispraka. You should be free from desire. Then what happens? Sukham atyandikam. Atyandikam means transcendental happiness. Real happiness which goes beyond the empirical happiness and empirical unhappiness. Because at the empirical level there cannot be undiluted happiness. It's just like seeking a coin with only one side. A coin will have both sides. But the real happiness comes when a devotee feels that he has surrendered himself. Yesterday I explained this in very graphic detail. That ideal of Saranagati, the ideal of Prapatti. We need not go into that again. So this ideal of self-surrender gives a glimpse of this transcendental happiness which goes beyond trivial empirical happiness and empirical unhappiness. So such a devotee, naturally, he is free from elation. He is not happy. This morning I said, he is always in a realm of eternal, transcendental, blissful attitude. So naturally he cannot have any experience of fleeting, momentary, sensory happiness. So he is from elation. Therefore he is free from sorrows. No anger, no craving. And then the idea is again said, samashatraucha mitrecha, tatha manapamanayuhu, sitoshna sukha dukkeshu samasanga vivarjitaha. So samashatraucha mitrecha. Towards his enemy and also towards his friend, he will have the same attitude. But devotional philosophers give you a strong warning. In many books you find it. This is the state of a devotee of the highest type. A devotee who has reached the highest transcendental level of spiritual experience. Before you reach that stage, you should try to acquire all the characteristics. But before you reach that stage, don't practice spiritual democracy when you interact with people around. And in the Bhagavata Purana, there is a description of 3 levels of evolution of an ideal devotee. And there, while describing a devotee who has not reached the highest level, but who has certainly gone beyond who are advanced from the lowest level, there is a description of such a devotee and what should be his attitude. So there, Bhagavad Purana, I give this story in the form of a story. Yesterday I mentioned the 9 great sages who approached the great king Nimi. This is called Nimi Navayogi Samvada, but I won't go into those details. But one point yesterday I didn't mention, I was reserving for this verse. There, I already explained the devotee of the highest type. Sarva bhudeshu pasyed bhagavad bhavam atmanaha bhudani bhagavadi atmani esha bhagavadottamaha. That is in perfect agreement with the characteristics of the highest devotee mentioned here in this 12th chapter. Now, there, the great sage Andariksha says, a devotee who has reached the highest level of spiritual consciousness, devotional experience, he feels the entire creation is existing in God, and he also experiences the presence of God in everything in this world. So he sees the whole creation in God, and he experiences the presence of God in the entire creation. This is not different from the highest Advaitic non-dualistic experience. But those who have not reached that stage, they have to be very careful. So their Antariksha comes down to the level of a devotee who has not reached this highest sublime level of devotional experience, evolution. He says, Ishware tad adhineshu baliseshu disutsucha prema maitri kripa upeksha yak karodi samadhyamaha. This is the verse. The idea is, what should be the attitude of a devotee who has certainly advanced from the kindergarten level, primary level, but certainly not reached the highest level? There, that sage says, he should be devoted to God, and he should consider God's devotees as his friends. He should have compassion towards those who do not know anything about God, but who are not wicked people. They want to know, but they don't know. He should have compassion towards them. So he should be devoted to God. He should be friendly with God's devotees. He should be compassionate towards those who don't know anything more about God, but who are spiritual seekers. But there is a fourth category. So, for those people, Antariksha says, and Swamiji also says in one context, Upeksha means indifference. So Swami Vivekananda in one context uses the word indifference. With such people, indifference. He uses this word thrice in a single. It's a phrase, in fact. Only this much. Indifference. Though there are many people whom if you try to help, they will help you, they will convert you. See, if you have reached the state of a Buddha, you can very easily try to convert total unbelievers. If you have become somebody like Ramakrishna Paramahamsa, you can try to convert Girish Chandra Ghosh. Otherwise, they will convert you to their level. This is what really happens. So, what this sage, Antariksha says, you should keep a distance. You should be able to keep a distance. You should be indifferent. Upeksha is the word used here. Ishware tad adhineshu baliseshu disutsucha prema maitri kripa upeksha. Prema means highest devotion towards God. Maitri means friendliness, comradeship towards God's devotees. Kripa means compassion towards those who are ignorant of God, but who would like to know. And then what about those Dishutsu means there are many people. If you tell them, well, I'm going to listen to a talk on Vedanta or devotion, they will say, it's absolute nonsense, they will tell you. They will try their best to dissuade you. So, if you are very friendly with them, you are lost. But you cannot be inimical with them, because hostility also creates a link, a chain. Friendship also creates a chain. Its opposite, enmity, also creates a chain. Both will create a bondage. So you should not try to be too friendly with them and try to convert them. And at the same time, you should not try to be angry with them, because they may create problems for you. So with such people, you should be indifferent. This is for the seekers. Because very often, people ask this question, if everything is God, then why can't we look upon all the criminals, all the evil people as our friends? Let us be friendly with them. That is very dangerous. If you have reached the status of a Ramakrishna Paramahamsa or a Shankaracharya or a Buddha or a Christ, all right. But otherwise, even they didn't take the trouble to convert the entire humanity. They didn't do that. So, a very important warning is given in the Bhagavata Purana. You should be very careful. You should have an attitude of total indifference towards those people who may exert a negative and harmful influence on you. It is not that you should hate them, not at all. Hatred also establish a link, connecting link, just as much as extreme attachment. So you should not be very friendly with them, and you need not be hostile with them. Keep a long distance. So this is the attitude. So that point should be kept in mind when we read this verse, Samashatrauja Mitreja. So towards friends and also towards enemies, you should have the same attitude. But here we are reading about the attributes and characteristics of a devotee of the highest type. You heard of Buddha. Buddha was a great man, enlightened man. And there is an important character in Buddha's life, Angulimala. His hobby was, he used to go about robbing people. And not only that, before robbing, he cut off their fingers also, make a garland and then kill them. So robbing, cutting off the fingers and then killing. That was his hobby. Now, this man was staying in a forest and Buddha was one day going through that road. So some people gave him strong warning, be very careful, there is an evil, wicked man, a robber there. Buddha didn't bother. And Buddha walked and he confronted this man. This man tried, as usual, he wanted to rob Buddha, and he tried to catch up with him. Buddha was walking very slowly, and this robber tried to chase him, but he could not catch up with Buddha. And this man got tired. Then Buddha turned back, and when he saw Buddha's face, he became a different man. Now, if you can do that, you can be friendly with everyone. Otherwise, they will convert you. So that is the idea behind. So spiritual literature gives a strong warning against any adventurous attempt to practice what is possible only for the highest devotee. This is the idea behind. So, Shama Satrauja Mitreja Tatha Manapamanayo. Again, see, one need not be elated when he is honored, when a seeker is honored, and he should not feel too much depressed when he is not honored properly. That's the idea behind. Sitoshna Sukha Dukkeshu Samasanga Vivarjitaka. So, he should have the same feeling of equanimity and perfect mental equilibrium in all conditions, in all situations, whether that condition is pleasant or unpleasant, favorable or unfavorable. Because he should remain always in a state of perfect equanimity due to his non-attachment. This is the idea behind. Now we have half an hour for interaction, so you can ask any questions for interaction. If you have no question, then after some time I will continue the text. We can take a few more verses.
Swami, in Bhakti Yoga and in a Raja Yoga, they have these chakras, right? And they say that the mind goes from one chakra to another chakra. But in Bhakti Yoga also, is there any association between these two, like from the Bhakti? Can you tell that the chakra is, the mind is in this chakra kind of thing?
In Bhakti Yoga, we don't have this tradition of chakra, but there is another way of analyzing your progress in devotional life. It's called, Salokya, Samipya, Sarupya, Sarshti and Sayuja. These are the five stages of evolution towards the highest devotional experience. So, in the tradition of Ramanujais and Madhvas, and also in the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's tradition, Vallabha and other Nimbarka, in all these Vaishnavite traditions, they take many of these ideas which are elaborated in the Bhagavata Purana. So, as you evolve more and more, on the one hand, you progress as a devotee. You start manifesting more and more of divine qualities and divine attributes, which are explained here. And this is explained from another angle. So first, you mentally start living in the realm of God, which is called Salokyam. Salokyam means living in the world of God, living with God as your friend, in the company of God. This is called the first stage is Salokyam. You can very easily imagine, a devotee who reads only scriptures, religious scriptures, and meets holy men, discusses holy subjects, and practices meditation. So naturally, he will be living in a world where God, his chosen deity, alone exists. So this stage is called Salokyam. And this is the beginning, the first stage. At a still more advanced level, this may be possible not only not just in one birth, but maybe in several lives. And as he progresses further, from Salokya means from that state in which he lives with God in his world, or he mentally lives in the world of divine ideas, he feels a nearness. So Salokya means nearness. So he himself feels very near to God. Samipyam it is called. Samipyam means nearness. You feel yourself living very in close proximity with God. Well, if you read those of you who have read the lives of Narayana Bhatta or William Uncle or all these great devotees, or if you read lives of Saint Francis or the mystics Saint Catherine, or all these great mystics of Middle Ages, if you read their books, you find their writings, some Philokalia, Brother Lawrence books and all, fine. They were living altogether in a different world. Spinoza, they were living in a different world. That's why how do you call it God intoxicated man? Because mentally they were living in a different world. And they felt all the time the nearness of their object of worship, God. Just an example, classic example is Spinoza or Eckhart, Meister Eckhart, who lived in 13th century. So you can very easily, if you read their writings, they were living in a transcendental plane. Then, so Salokya means living in the same world with God. Samipya means living very close to God. And so Salokya, Samipya. Then Samipya. Then no. Here it is called Sarupya. Sarupya means it's a higher plane. Before Sarupya, there is one attribute mentioned in the Bhagavata Purana. It's called Sarshti. Sarshti means you feel that you have got some of the attributes of the object of your worship. So as I said earlier, the more you worship a compassionate God, you yourself start manifesting great qualities like compassion, humanness, etc. This is what happens. Slowly it happens. So from Salokya to Samipya, then to Sarshti, it's called. Then Sarupya. Sarupya means, and there again, if you read Sri Ramakrishna's life, you find Sri Ramakrishna practiced different types of spiritual discipline. And in each case, he started manifesting some of the even physical, visible similarities and characteristics of his object of meditation, object of worship. This also happens. So, in Sanskrit it's called Yad Bhavayadi Tad Bhavadi. If you meditate yourself upon upon an object which is divine, which is compassionate, naturally, some of those even external characteristics also may start manifesting in you. At the psychological level, intellectual level, some of the attributes and also even some of the physical attributes. It's called Sarupya. And Sayujya is complete unity with that object of worship. But it is not identity, but unity. You feel that you are one with God, but you don't become God himself. It's called Sayujya. So, Salukya, Samipya, Sarupya, so for the Sashti, Sarupya, and Sayujya. Sayujyam is the last and highest. So at that stage, you feel yourself very close. You feel a kind of inner unity with the object of worship. That's why the more and more we try to engage our mind and five senses in some kind of activity which brings in good ideas, good thoughts, good moments, then we'll be free from conflicts. And as conflicts decrease in direct proportion to that process, you feel that you become more and more tranquil and equanimity. You establish yourself in equanimity of mind. This is what really happens. These are the 5 stages of a devotee's evolution in devotional tradition.
So the Sayujya, is that like where you have like samadhi or...
It is not samadhi. Samadhi is not, the word is not used in this context. One can say Sayujyam is some kind of Savikalpa Samadhi, one can equate it, but in devotional literature they don't use that term. At the experience level it may be the same, but the technical language used in different systems of thought may be different.
Swamiji, in the morning you were explaining a context from Bhagavad Gita that whatever is beautiful and whatever is beauty, it's the beauty of God itself. So in this context, I would like to ask you that this is a very common right from the very prehistoric Upanishad tradition till today, that anything that is awesome in nature, for example, even the setting sun or even the Himalayas, the waves, even in fact you have a picture here itself. So what is that relation? Because we all as human beings, whenever we do see a very beautiful sunset, for example, just a sunset, we do get awed by it. And I have seen that reverberating many times in Upanishad. In fact, at one stance it says that whose majesty does, like looking at the Himalayas, the poet says that whose majesty does this Himalayas declare? Like whose kingdom is it declaring? So I just want to know what is the relation between this awe feeling that we have and the actual spiritual life?
Oh yes, the Vedic literature, the Nasadiya Suktam, it comes, The Vedic literature, what you mentioned comes in Nasadiya Suktam. In the Vedantic and Upanishad literature, in the Gita also, it is clearly stated that wherever there is manifestation of supreme glory or grandeur or sublimity, you should understand that this is born out of a part of God's glory. Yidit vibhunima sattum simadu jidameva tattadeva avagachattum amatejam sambhavam. This idea behind. Now, and then you refer to sunset, sunrise, etc. Now remember, this is not pantheism, not nature worship. See, that is entirely different. There are generally 5 or 6 levels of stages in the evolution of the concept of ultimate reality. And this can be applied not only to Vedic pantheon, Vedic metaphysics, but also generally speaking. At the beginning itself, religion or spiritual tradition began with man's feeling of awe at the grandeur of nature. So he may have thought that the mighty ocean, river, valley, mountains, lakes, all these are divine powers. So this is sometimes this becomes a kind of nature worship, it is called. Such verses are found in Vedic tradition also. But not only this, so it's called pantheism. At the still higher level, at the higher level of evolution, man discovered that there is the presence of this divine spirit in every being. So it's God as an antaryami, it's called pantheism, it is called. And in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, there are such mantras, very great mantras, Yajnavalkya says. This earth, water, air, sun, everything. All these are vehicles through which the divine principle expresses itself. But they are not divine, the divine principles. These are vehicles. Ye pradhivyam dishtan pradhivyam andaraha im pradhivi naveda yasya pradhivi shariram ye pradhivyah andaro yamayedi eshatayatma andaryami amrita. This is how it begins in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. Like that, number of verses. I shall explain this. Yajnavalkya, a great sage in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, tells another philosopher, a woman philosopher, a great philosopher of ancient India. Her name was Gargi. Very famous saint and woman philosopher of ancient India. Now, he says, there is the supreme reality, which is the indweller in everything. And it exists on earth. Now, if you say God exists on earth, well, you can see these mountains, valleys, trees, is all gods. So, to rule out that possibility, Yajnavalkya says, it is within Prithvi, within earth. Within earth, there is coal, iron ore, bauxite, everything is there. So, it is not like that. But the earth doesn't know about this divine principle. And of this divine principle, this earth is only a medium for expressing itself. It's a vehicle, a medium through which the earth expresses itself. Just as this mechanism is the medium through which electricity expresses and manifests itself. So it becomes light energy. And this earth and all these external empirical phenomena, these things don't know this supreme principle, though the supreme principle expresses itself through all this. And residing within all these, the supreme principle regulates everything in this world. Like that, these are mystical statements. I don't have much time to go through all the details. The idea is this. So this supreme reality is not natural phenomena. So it is not pantheism. It is not something which lives within it. It is not pantheism. And then you may say, in that case, there is a divine principle behind every single of these natural phenomena. Behind a lake, behind a mountain, behind the ocean. If you go to some of the primitive religions, pre-Christian religions, either Greek or Sumerian tradition or in Greek tradition, you find the concepts of polytheism. I mean, there is a concept of a devada, god or goddess behind everything. If you read Homer's Iliad, fighting is going on, and all there are gods also who are active participants in the battle. Many of them represent many natural phenomena. So, and these gods and goddesses personify these natural phenomena. That is not what is meant by Upanishad, the Vedantic concept of God. So it is neither pantheism, nor pantheism, nor polytheism. Then you may see this monotheism. Monotheism means a supreme God who is the controller of all other deities. There is another concept, it's henotheism, which means where when you talk about one God, you consider him as supreme. Then another God and he is supreme, all this. These are not the ideas expressed in the Upanishads. And then there is monism, in which you believe in the reality of one supreme impersonal principle, which is immanent in everything, the indweller in everything, which is transcendental, which is omnipresent and omniscient, which is beyond words, beyond expressions, which can only be known through experience, which can never be explained, but can only be experienced. This Sakshat, Aparokshat Brahma, all this you find here. It is nearest to you, because it is with you yourself. But your senses and mind cannot define or see that reality. Can your senses or mind define or explain an experience? Experience can never be defined or explained. It cannot be. Even electricity, you cannot explain the experience. If you get a shock, you may get treatment, but can you explain how you feel when you get a shock? Even a painful experience cannot be defined. So the sublime transcendental experience naturally cannot be defined or explained. So it can only be experienced. This is the essence of Vedantic philosophy, and this is also true of the highest devotional experience. Highest devotion and the highest Vedantic experience are the same. No less an Advaita than Shankaracharya himself. In the Gita, in the 13th chapter, 10th verse, you find Maicha ananya yogena bhakti ravibhijarini vivikta desha sevittum anabhirjana samsati. You find Shankaracharya says he is giving a graphic description of pure, undiluted, unchanging devotion of the highest type. Then Shankaracharya says Sacha Jnanam, and that pure, highest, undiluted devotion is Jnanam. It is Advaitic experience itself. And it can only be experienced. So ultimately, the highest devotion can only be experienced. Cannot be explained. That's the idea. As I said earlier, you can find a glimpse of this ideal in the writings of all great mystics, to whichever religion or whichever religious tradition or spiritual tradition they were born. You can find this is because the language of experience is universal. Language of explanation may be different, vary from language to language, culture to culture. But language of experience is silence, and that's a universal. That's the idea. We have just about 5-10 minutes. Okay. So, if you have no question, nothing to discuss then.
Yeah. This seems like a very silly question, but I was just wondering, is there a significance that Hanuman is a monkey? I mean, I know it's much more than that, but does it symbolize, does the monkey symbolize something, or is there more to it?
Well, it take you to another realm, but according to many scholars, historians and interpreters, it was, word use is Vanara, Sanskrit, and it's not, so very often is portrayed that way. And again, see, Ramayana should be considered not as a book of history, it's a book of mythology. Mm-hmm. Just as in Homer you find gods and goddesses catching each other's throat and fighting and all that, you find. You find such things, In many, it should be taken more or less as a literary classic with a tinge of historical truth in it. So that's all. So according to many historians and scholars, they belong to a group of people from a purely anthropological sense, they belong to a non-Aryan tribe. That's how they explained. Because the word Aryan means people who believed in Vedic tradition, they were called Aryans. Those who believed in Vedic tradition. So there were many tribes who were not fully integrated into this Vedic culture, the culture of Rigveda. So they came to be designated as different from the mainstream society. Maybe around 6th or 7th millennia BC. That's right. Long before the nation state as India came into existence. So, Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.